Hi and welcome. My name is Mark Powell from Oculus Insights. It is 3 o'clock Eastern Time. Welcome to our first of our webinar of our Resilience Guide for Veterinarians. I'm just going to let a couple more minutes go, let everybody join in, and then we'll start the presentation. So I imagine everybody can see my screen right now. Just trying to find, sorry, I'm just trying to get my Zoom browser showing up here. So, welcome again. We have quite a few participants on. What I'd ask you is if you can just put on the comment section just what country you're from. As we're going along, what we're doing is what I'm calling the top 10 tips to survive, to come out of the COVID-19 crisis together. What I would ask is if everybody just put down where they're coming from, and also what I'm going to do after every kind of point, I'm going to stop and look at the questions to see if anybody has a question on that particular subject. I am recording this. We will upload this later, so you'll have an ability to review this, go over any of the sections there. So it's a couple minutes after 3. Let's start. Again, I'm Mike Pownall. I'm from Canada. I'm a partner in Oculus Insights. I'm a practicing veterinarian, and a lot of the things I'm going to talk about right now are things I'm dealing with my own practice right now. We are going through it. I'm just outside of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Our premier of our province has announced a state of emergency. We are only essential services are available, and luckily, veterinary medicine is an essential service. So I am going to share some of the things that we're doing here, and we will take it from there. So let's begin. So here's our challenge. This is an unprecedented crisis. And it's very easy for us to be overwhelmed by what is coming towards us. And just to sort of sit there and go, I have no control over the matter. I'm just going to let it happen. And hopefully when it's all over, there's something on the other end that my business can carry on. And at Oculus, we argue that, you know what, all things end no matter how great they are, how bad they are. We've had a great 10 years of the stock market. It's been one of the best bull markets in recent memories, but it's ending. And just like what we're going through now will end, just like the Great Recession ended, other economic depressions ended. Our challenge for our own practices and what we say to anybody else is, if you can prepare yourself now, if you can use this preparation to navigate through this pandemic, this crisis, you'll be in a much better position on the other side of it. And, you know, in the past, veterinary medicine has been considered resilient to a lot of the challenges, even in the Great Recession, 2008, 2010. I can just speak for North America. Most companion animal practices did quite well. Equine ones suffered a little bit, food animal a little bit in the middle, depending on the species. But as a whole, veterinarians do well. And after this is over, people are still going to want their pets, still want their pets taken care of, their horses, food animal production, what have you. I'd even argue that the more time people are spending at home right now, that they're actually developing even stronger bonds with their animals. They're seeing, oh, I didn't notice that my cat scratches all the time, so I didn't really appreciate that my dog's having a hard time getting on the couch. So we may find actually that we are able to do more for animals because people are realizing, hey, when this is over, I want to get back to my vet. I want to get this checked out there. So our challenge is, like the ship in front of us, is how do we navigate? Do we just navigate straight into the storm and let it happen to us? Or do we try to move and bypass much of the storm's effects? Because again, what we're always going to say is, this will end. How do we prepare ourselves to be better positioned on the other end to be able to thrive as a practice? So here are what we're doing right now at Oculus Insights. We're multinational. We're based in the Netherlands, the United States of America, and Canada, and we offer veterinary business education and management for veterinary practices at all levels and all species. When this hit, we thought last week, you know what, we need to put together a guide for vet practices, not only for our own clients, for any veterinarians out there. We want the profession to do well. And so what we have done is a number of packages that we're going to put together, starting off with a weekly webinar every Tuesday at 3 o'clock Eastern. There'll be a new subject. Some of the stuff that I'm going to talk to today, the top 10 items, we're going to get into more details, whether it's a webinar, whether it's a podcast. We're doing twice a week podcasts. One just came out on Saturday. We're recording a new one tomorrow on how to manage your cash better. We have weekly blogs, might be twice, 3 times a week blogs. We're going to be doing a lot on our LinkedIn page and our Facebook page. We have Oculus Insights, so just search for us there. We'll be inviting special guests. Part of Oculus's business management training is that we use experts from across the world. We have used experts to teach our courses who are teaching MBA level courses at some of the top universities in North America and Europe. And in fact, next week, I'll be joined by Whitney Hischier, who teaches at the Haas School of Business at Berkeley University of Berkeley, graduate of Stanford University. And she'll be talking with us about how to make tough decisions in these calamitous times. And then we have a page set up there that all of what we have for our resiliency guide is on this page here, and I'll be posting this later on as well. And we'll be posting this online as well. So 10 tips to help us navigate the storm. And so these are the 10 things we're going to talk about. We're looking at everything at a bit of a high level picture right now. And between the podcasts and webinars, we're going to dig deep into each one of these to give you more information to help you be better prepared for what's going on. So number one, we're going to talk about decision making, how we communicate with our staff, but also with our clients. We're going to talk about scenario planning. How do you plan for whatever scenario is going to come your way, whether it's decrease in sales or being forced to shut down, what have you. How do we maximize cash on hand? Now that we're going in a crisis, we want cash. We don't want to have a lot of money in the hands of our inventory or the hands of our clients if we have to give them credit. How do you do flexible staff care? We need to be able to come out of this this pandemic, this crisis, with our clinic in hand, our staff fully structured, fully together. How do you keep them all together? How do we communicate with the bank? That's a big thing right now. I will speak on a personal level. I have a phone call tomorrow morning with my bank and my accountant because, like many of you, I need to put plans in place to make sure I have enough cash to survive the next few months. Are there government support programs that you can use? And finally, we're going to talk about marketing. People are saying marketing in the recession, that's not an expense I need. And I'll give you, I would say, a contrary opinion on that. And then finally, how do we stay positive? Boy, as we are right here, we are the leaders of our practices and people are coming to us for guidance. And that's hard when we ourselves are struggling. So hopefully I can give you some tips on staying positive, but I'm hoping these 9 other steps give you the structure, the ability to look at your practice completely and go, you know what, I'm okay. I'll get through this, and this is how I'm going to get through everything. So let's talk about decision making. So I look at decision making about my business a lot like myself as a veterinarian. And I think the biggest thing that a lot of us do, when we're in a time of crisis like we are now is we make rush decisions. We get into groupthink. We're thinking everybody else is doing this, I have to do this. And really, like you are, like let's say a hit by car, a dog comes in, or a horrible laceration on a horse. As a veterinarian, you're going to stop, you're going to evaluate the situation. You're going to look at what is really going on. You're basically doing an examination, an audit, if you will, on your own practice, looking at the financial health, which we're going to talk about, looking at some of the parameters that are going on. And you're going to be very calm about that. And you're going to look at everything and go, is this really what's happening? Or is this what I think is happening? And, you know, really, what can you control? There's a lot going on now that we cannot control. So I would just say, you know, look at what goes on, evaluate it, make a plan. And then when you have that plan, review the plan. We're going to talk about this in much more detail next Tuesday with Whitney Hischier from Haas School of Business at University of California at Berkeley. But really, I think the number one thing that because I know I see some of the discussion forums on some of the Facebook groups, I've been talking to colleagues, and people are acting they're acting like the clients we get frustrated with that are almost running around with their heads cut off, and they're speculating and they're worried. But as veterinarians and as the leader of your practice, we need to step back and go, all right, what's really going on? Let's evaluate everything. Am I making the right plan? If I make plan A, what will be the impact? When will I have to shift plan A? What the parameters or the logic behind plan A start to shift? And we'll get into that with scenario planning. So if I could think, the biggest thing is, all right, we're in a crisis. There are things I control. There are things I can't control. Let's look at what I can control, take a deep breath, be the voice of reason. Let's make a measured response. Now, the flip side of that is often when people get into these situations, they don't want to make a decision because they don't want to make the wrong decision. And I think we need to remember, we have to make a decision. Just don't make it a rushed one. Evaluate it, have some reason. It's a big decision, sleep on it. It's kind of like an email that you send when you're angry. You look at it the next day, you're like, oh, I'm glad I didn't send that. I think our decision making is like that too, that we can look back and go, all right, I slept on it. My judgment, my assumptions are right. We'll go ahead. Or, oh boy, so glad I slept on it because I didn't consider these other factors that are going to alter what we're doing. Any questions on that? Again, I'm just going to take a stop after every one of these. And in that chat section, if you have a question, just type it in and I'll address it as quickly as I can. Okay. Nothing so far, so let's go on to the next one. I think the next thing we need to do is really have a plan to communicate with our staff. They're looking at us. They know that their job depends a lot on things that you as a practice owner or leader can't control, but there are things that they know you can control. And I would say having clear, consistent messaging with our staff. I don't think we can communicate too much or too often as long as you have a consistent message. And so when this whole thing started, I've been communicating with my staff on a daily basis, either with an all hands on deck conference call. I did that when it first started, or with a daily email. And what I did when it first started is I want to have a plan that we can all rally behind. And my plan was, and the consistent message was, I want to maximize employment for all staff. I want all staff to be employed in as many hours as we can, knowing that there will be challenges and there will be ways that we'll have to shrink our hours. But when I get into later on staffing and flexible staffing, my message always is, I want to make sure that I'm employing as many people as I can, that they can get all the hours that they can. But, and everybody gets this, it can't endanger the business. It can't put us in a position of harm because we're trying to be nice to everybody. So people get it. And so every day we communicate, message is consistent, we're transparent. We're telling them what's going on. We tell them what is happening to the business because, you know, people can guess and they can tell when you're not telling them the full truth. If you want to have confidence And if you want your staff to have confidence in you, you've got to be transparent. And maybe you've got to go down and expose things or talk about things that you're not used to talking about as a practice owner. And I think really, as us being leaders, we have to be vulnerable and tell them, you know what, I don't know. I'm looking for this information. This is a scenario I've never encountered before, so I'm seeking your counsel. And I think, part of the communication with staff is that you're also getting feedback from them. I just got off a phone call with the vets in our practice about an hour ago because we were designated as an essential service. What does that mean? The partners in the practice are not going to dictate to everybody else that this is what an essential service is. We want everybody to buy into the decision. We want them to support what we're doing. And the way we do that is by having their contribution. So as a team of vets, we went through and said, this is essential, this is not. We'll review this in a couple of weeks if things start to slack off a bit. But for the time being, this is a decision that we're all making here. And I think that really helps when you have everybody on the same page. The other question is that we have to support them with their decisions. Some people in our practice may just say, you know what, I'm not comfortable coming to work. Either I have fear for my own health. We have people that are living with people that are elderly or have pre-existing conditions or immune compromised. And they're like, if I go out to work, I'm going to bring something back. We have to support the decision. There's no judgments on this whatsoever. And I think we have to be clear that there are no judgments. And we reiterate every time, we're supporting your decisions no matter what it's going to be. And I think we also have to support them with client understandings because clients may misunderstand. The clients are rattled just like we are. So we may go in and do an appointment and we think we've clearly communicated and the client comes back and goes, I had no idea that's what you're talking about. Support our vets. They're the front lines. They're putting up with a lot, being out there every day. Same with our technicians, our receptionists. We can do a lot of great social distancing, really being, really having a sanitary space for ourselves, but yet we're out there. And this is troubling to everybody. So support your vets, your staff. Again, you're going to have that one-to-many communication to you as a leader of the practice. Hey, here's our daily update. This is what's going on. These are the challenges that we're facing. This is what we expect to face. This is what we've resolved. But a lot of it is going to be very much one-to-one, checking in on your key people, checking in on vets. How are you doing? Sometimes when a group of people get together, they start talking and somebody's thinking a contrary thought. Maybe everybody's all on board. Yeah, we're going to do this essential services. Yeah, I'm really on board. And one vet's like, I'm not comfortable doing this, but they don't want to vocalize this or bring it up in front of a group of people. So, that's why these one-on-one conversations, they can then share, Mike, I'm glad everybody's on board. I can't do this. All right, I'm not judging. What can we do to support your decision? How do we make this work for you and for the business? Any questions on how to communicate with staff? All right, well, let's talk about communicating with clients because we'll talk about that now. We're also going to talk about it with marketing. So again, the theme that we're seeing here is being consistent. So regular communications. So, we'll talk about the platforms, but, the clients are as confused as we are often. They're hearing mixed stories. Are we essential? Are we not essential? Are we open? Are we just doing emergencies? Are we doing elective procedures? So having a clear definitions of services that you're offering is essential. I think the other one is talking to them about the guidelines with which your veterinarians, vet assistants, and team are going to work. Here are our social distancing guidelines. Whether it's calling us from the parking lot, we'll come out, grab your pet, bring them into the clinic, and we'll do the work, to us going to a farm. Here are the expectations of how we want people to be dealing with us. But also be very clear is if you can't follow these guidelines, we're not going to do work. We had an example of somebody that came to one of the barns that we work with, and we found out that this person had not been socially distancing or was not in self-isolation, even though she had returned from an area where it was recommended that she self-isolated. Got to the point where the barn actually fired this person as a client because this person really endangered the health and safety of others. but we have telling all of our vets, these are the guidelines. You have every right to go to a client. Please, these are the restrictions we've talked about before we came to the appointment. I don't see you respecting it. Unless you change, I'm going to have to leave. And you really have to be very firm about that. Equally firm on that are the payment guidelines. We're going to talk about accounts receivable later. And I know in a lot of companion animal practices, most of them, you know, people pay at the time of service, which is brilliant. And you've eliminated a lot of your problems. Some other practices are going to be a little bit more flexible on that, a little less tolerant of being paid at the time of service. But even if you have the expectation that people are going to pay at the time of service, and that's what's always been done, I think we have to remind people these are different times. We all know that people are out of work or restricted hours. There's less money. So I think we don't want to, you know, it's not wrong for us to ask for money. We can't be nasty about it or harsh, but politely saying, you know, at our appointment, like our typical services agreement is payment at time of service. And I think you'd also maybe want to think about developing scripts for your client-facing staff, whether it's your vets, your receptionists, your vet assistants, you know, in terms of various scenarios. How do I ask for money? How do I insist on social distancing? How do I insist on, you know, somebody staying in the parking lot with their animal and I'll come out and get it? So I think these are depending on your practice and the scenarios that you're getting a lot. And if you're communicating it for staff, you're getting an idea of some of the challenges that you're facing, and developing these scripts would really help them. And then finally, use multiple channels. Use your newsletters, use Facebook, use Instagram, and then do it over again. We sent out an email blast last week to a lot of our clients talking about what we're doing, and that we were still getting phone calls, and we realized that not everybody's on the same channel. So, you know, do whatever social media platforms you're on, and do that newsletter, and then do it again. You know, constant reminder, because the situations are changing so much. So you may have to send a newsletter to clients twice a week, not once a week, saying, here's where we are now. So we're sending out, my own practice, we're sending out a newsletter this evening because it has been confirmed we're an essential service. We're allowed to go to barns. There was some confusion in our environment lately. So we're going to reiterate, this is what we're doing, and we'll probably reiterate it again at the end of the week so everybody is on board. All right, I'm just going to look and if there are any questions, and then if not, we'll move on to the next area. So scenario planning. So this, I think, is one of the more important things we can do too. And this gets back into how do you make the right decision. So last Thursday or Wednesday night, I don't remember which one, but I mean, boy, the news was coming out fast and furious. And I was in a bad spot, I'll be honest. It was dark. You know, I remember just sitting there, it was like 9:30 at night. And I'm like, how the heck are we going to get through this? And all these crazy thoughts were going through my head. And I was just like, oh man, this is not good. Next morning, I woke up and I went, all right, we're going to put some plans in place. And what I'm going to do is, and I'll show you an example. And when this is over, I will send a copy of this to people that have attended it live, that you've been able to do it, but this is also something that we can also help you with. And this is what if scenarios. So let me give you an example here. So I think you should all be able to see this screen right here. And so this is my what if scenario. So what I have in yellow are percentage of budget. So in column B is my budget for the, for the month. And so, I'm going to do this on month-to-month basis because who knows what May is going to bring, but let's look at what April's going to do. And so I have actually done this for April, May, and June. When I'm meeting with my bank tomorrow, I can say, here's my expectation for April. I expect things will be better in May. And so I'm giving this assumption, and it should be even better in June. And then I can look at it. But here's what I do. So let's say in this scenario, our revenue is 80% of what it budgeted. Our cost of goods, that's our medications, our supplies, the things we need to do to be a veterinarian. That could include pet food, vaccines, flea and tick kind of products. And then I break out our biggest expenses is our payroll, as our staff. So let's look at what our vet payroll, our tech payroll, office, which could be a receptionist, any kind of management. And then we have fixed costs, and those are usually costs that don't change if you don't, that's your rent, your heat, your utilities, your insurance. But some of them you can change. There may be some things that, credit card fees. Well, if your sales are going down, maybe your credit card fees are going to go down too. Maybe there are certain things that you had on fixed costs, like meals or kind of educational opportunities that you're going to say, you know what, in the next 3 months, we can't have any of these. And so you're not going to do it. So if you look at it, you have my budget and then the revised. And so the budget, this is on a monthly basis. These are just numbers I kind of made up, trying to use the same kind of percentages. So on average, vet practice has between 20 and 25% cost of goods sold, about 40% for payroll. So I've worked with these numbers. And so what happened is, if we did the budget, and now our sales are 80% of what they would have been if we budgeted. So instead of 250, it's 200,000. Our cost of goods goes down from 62,500 to 50,000, and so on and so forth. But you notice I haven't changed anything with the payroll. So that's still the monthly payroll is going to be 100,000. And I haven't done anything with my fixed costs. So that's going to stay at 47,500. But going into April, that would have been a good month for me. Like a lot of businesses, we do poorly in the winter. It's much slower. And we hope April, May, June, July, we're getting much busier to sort of give us the money back that we've lost. So instead of making 40,000, I'm going to only make 2,500, which is still a profit. But we also have to consider we may have some cash expenses, loans, business loans, or bank loans for equipment, or leasehold improvements, and maybe some changes that you've done. And so maybe every month you've got to spend $5,000 repaying loans, vehicle leases, what have you. So if I've made only a profit of 2,500 and I've got $5,000 in expenses, I've lost money. As opposed to making 35,000 in April, I'm down 2,500. So all right, let's go back and let's look at this. Let's say if our revenue has gone down 80%, all right, we're going to have to cut hours, or we're going to lay some people off. So I'm going to make everybody's labor go down 20%. It's going to be 80% of what I budgeted. And there's a little bit I can do with my fixed costs. Maybe I can save a couple, percentage points or whatever. So I'm going to put 98% for some things. Well, look what happens if down here, even though your sales are down 80%, or excuse me, 20%, they're 80% of what you budgeted, you're making a profit. And so this is scenario planning. This is really scenario planning, going, okay, if my revenue goes there, what do I need to do? Can I change my cost of goods? Can I get really tight? I only order what I want to. Oh, I've just added about another $10,000. So this is a great tool to look at and go, what if? A couple of days ago, when it wasn't looking like Ontario was going to allow vets to be an essential service, I was thinking April is going to be devastating. I'm going down to 20% of sales. I'm not going to buy anything. My payroll is going to go down, like, let's say, to 25%. This was kind of the scenarios that I was looking at. And I was like, okay, this is where we're going to be. And I'm still going to lose money. If that happened, I would have lost $34,000. But boy, a lot better than if I hadn't changed any of my payroll or changed my cost of goods, where I would have lost 90,000 as opposed to 34. So this kind of tool really is helpful for us to understand, what does our business need? What do we need to do? What do we need to adjust to go forward? So I'm going to go back to my presentation. If anybody has any questions. Otherwise, I'll go right back to the presentation. So that's scenario planning, really important thing. And I will be sending out a copy of that to everybody that has attended this. I just need to make sure some of the cells are locked. So you'll get this probably by tomorrow. And of course, you'll have my contact information. You can reach out to us. So the other thing we need, just as we're talking about scenarios, is we need cash flow. We need to maximize the cash on hand. really, that's why we're seeing a lot of these businesses, airlines, hotels, restaurants floundering right now, is because they're dependent on cash coming in to pay the bills, and we're no different. And so the more cash we have on hand, the better. Somebody asked a question, do we have any idea of what decrease we will see? This goes back to the scenario planning. Boy, that's going to be really dependent on your environment. I'm telling you, what I'm doing is I'm tracking every single day, comparing it to the same day of the year before to see where I'm at. Last week, we were actually 5% above budget. This week, I don't think that's going to happen because we have a couple of doctors out on self-isolation because they had been traveling. I think this week we'll be down a bit lower. I don't know. And I would say, if it's an equine business, anywhere from 10 to 20% below, depending on your area. Companion animal, maybe the same. And I just think this is where we've got to be very responsive and look at this. So this is why I like the scenario planning, is because it's a great tool you can make that assumption. Remember I said in the first part, you make a plan and then you evaluate it. So let's say you made that scenario plan of 20% reduction, but as we're going along, sorry, I'm just asking a question. Somebody asked, are you still in presenter mode? And hopefully I am and I think I have it here. Yeah, so I'm just going to double check to make sure you're all seeing my presenter mode. And Yoke Loman's asked me that question, if you can type an answer or make a comment that you can see my presenter mode, that would help. So scenario planning, we go back to it, and then we are able to look at it and go, hey, we're going to be 20%. Actually, it's 30%, or it's only 10%. Great. That's where the flexibility of that scenario is good. So, all right, so let's go. So yeah, somebody said they calculated 50% off, was able to remain solvent. Wonderful. So whatever your business, everybody's different. For me, until I needed to start really looking at laying off people or adjusting shifts, it's a bit of a different number. We're all going to be different. What I do emphasize is look at how much money you've got to give back to the bank or to car payments or equipment manufacturers in terms of leases. So let's look at cash flow. Cash flow is a really important area. Some of the areas of accounts receivables, again, most companion animal practices are take payment of time of service. Wonderful. They don't really have to worry about it. But all of us have inventory. And so, if we're stockpiling our inventory, boy, what does that mean? Because you think of all the money we have tied up in with inventory, that's really going to impact us. We can look at accounts payables. How long does it take you to pay your suppliers? They expect to be paid in 30 days now, if not less. But these are extenuating times. And I think it's not unfair for us to go to our suppliers and say, hey, can I go to 50 days? Can I go to 60 days? I'll pay you. And I think, we're going to talk about talking to your bank. You got to be very, very open with them. But I think, I can't pay you in 30 days. It would really help me if I could pay you in 50 days. And it's a discussion because they need your money too to keep on going. But I think there's a balance there. Hopefully, most of us who are in the northern parts of North America, we're going into the spring season. And that's the season where we make most of our money and our cash flow. And so some of the things that we're going to do, like vaccine clinics, heartworm treatments, that will really help our cash flow. And if we were going into this maybe in the winter, we would, might not have hurt us so much because it's a slow time of the year anyhow. So we'll get into marketing and some of the things that we could be doing. And then finally, bank loans. And I think as we'll talk about the banks, what we can do about our bank loans. So I'm going to give you a couple of metrics because, if inventory or accounts receivable, one of the things for you to be able to judge if you're doing a good job or not is to look at what I like looking at, my average days accounts receivable. That's how many days on average it's taken me to collect money, or your business to collect money from your sales. This is the formula. And again, I'm making up some make-believe numbers. So let's say your account receivable is 300,000 on annual sales of 2.5 million, and you multiply it by 365 days. That gives you it takes you on average 44 days to receive a sale, payment on a sale. That's long, because as I said, if you're trying to pay your suppliers in 30 days, there's 14 days that you're waiting to get money back, that you're going to have to borrow or use savings to pay your suppliers. Another way of looking at it, that if we have 44 days of accounts receivable and $300,000 in accounts receivable, for every extra day, every day of accounts receivable, you've got $6,800 tied up. So the question is, would you rather have the money in the hands of your clients or in your bank account that you can use to be able to respond better to what's going on in this environment? So what we have to be careful about with accounts receivable is everybody has got less money, It's not just us who are slowing down, everybody's slowing down. But so it's a double-edged sword that on one hand, we got to be really diligent to get our money. The other hand, people might not have money to give. And so we may need to get flexible in payment terms or small payments on a weekly basis. So I think we just can't go out there like bullies and say, pay up, because people don't have money now. And I think we'll get into this in marketing. We're all in this together. So we got to find some solutions that work for your clients and for your business. So there's that delicate balance of need versus demand in terms of, we need this money in terms of just really being heavy-handed and insisting on it. So I think some discretion is going to be needed right now. But I do think we have the essential to be proactive, as we were talking before, in terms of communicating your clients, if they're aware before the appointment that, payment is expected. If you have payment options, if you have payment plans, if you can use some of third-party services to help pay for things, those things will be really helpful. And overall, for everything, is clear communication as expectations, as we've been talking about. Inventory management, same thing. We want a formula that we can look at to go, how are we doing? Are we getting better at it? So our average days inventory is, on average, how long does it take us to sell items in our inventory? And our average, the formula is average inventory divided by cost of goods sold. So it's done on an annual basis, and we look at the cost of goods sold. Now, you could do a running total of this. So it is March now. So you can look at from, a running total of April 1st, 2019 till the end of March 2020, and have a running total on that, so you can be more accurate on that. So again, looking at these figures, maybe they had $35,000 in inventory. Their cost of goods was $250,000 times 365 days. That gives it a 51 days. It's taking them on average 51 days to sell the inventory. Again, I'm starting to sound like a broken record. You've got to pay for that in 30. So there's some areas where we can maybe accumulate some more money, because every day that we have things tied up in inventory, that should be each day of average days inventory, it costs about $670. Now, the other thing, just as a side note with inventory, a lot of what we produce is produced in China. They're just returning to full production in their factories. And so I think many of you are already realizing, beyond face masks and gloves and alcohol, we may start to see some shortages of things. So I think it's just really careful that you may need to buy some things in advance, just to make sure you have it later on. So inventory management, order what is needed. As veterinarians, we love seeing our shelves full of goods. We may need to get a little bit more skimpier. Remember, we can get most things overnight. And so maybe we're just sort of ordering on an as-needs basis. One of the things I would do is look at my top 10 items that I would sell and count them every day, just to make sure those important items, that you have enough of those. So that's one of the things. Somebody asked, great question. What do we recommend about increasing prices right now, or more specifically, adding in new fees for infectious disease protocols? You know, we've already raised our prices. We had raised our prices at the beginning of January, so that's a bit of a moot point. But I think, again, we need to position ourselves for when this is over. And as a good business, if we're talking about raising our prices 2 to 3%, I don't have a problem with that. It's not like we're sitting there selling, hey, you want to buy toilet paper? It's $100 for 2 rolls. We're not doing anything that is going to, we're not taking advantage of the situation. At the same time, things may be a bit cheaper for us right now. Price of fuel is going down a lot. But there's a lot of things we still need to pay for. So I think a judicious small increase, I'm fine with it. Because remember, if you don't do your price increase now, and then this recession is over, then you've got to make up for it next year. So instead of doing a 3% increase this year, do you want to do 6% next year? There was a recent study, just as an aside, that looked at an American insurance company surveyed small animal practices on common procedures and looked at what they charged before the recession to 2017. And when they accounted for inflation and consumer spending or consumer price index, our prices are 6% lower than they should be. So in 2008, 2009, many of us didn't raise our prices. And then it's how do you get ahead then? So it may sound counterintuitive in this time of year or what we're going through, but I think we do need to keep our prices where they should be. We still have to run our businesses. And then I look at having more special orders. Clients are used to having things on the shelves. So maybe if you could say to them, hey, you want pet food? I know, you need that pet food coming up. We'll order it the day before. Or can you wait a day? Same with chronic medications, pain meds, what have you. I think we just can't do business as usual. I want to introduce a concept that we don't really talk about in vet medicine, and that's the working capital gap. And this is when you have how long it takes you to receive money from your clients, how long it takes you to sell inventory, and then you know how long it takes you to pay your suppliers. You have a working capital gap. And basically it tells you how much of your cash is tied up with inventory or accounts receivable. In other words, cash that isn't in your pocket. And the lower the better, obviously. The lower the gap, the more money that you have, and that the quicker it is that you have the money on hand to pay your suppliers. So the formula is average days inventory total plus your average days AR total minus how long on average is taking you to pay suppliers. So in the examples we were just using, we were 44 days average day inventory. It took us 51 days, I'm mixing it up a bit, 51 days to sell our inventory. Was 44 days accounts receivable. And on average, it was taking us 30 days to pay our suppliers. So that means our cash gap or working capital gap is 65. That's a lot. What if you're able to modify that a bit? What if you're able to lower your average days inventory to 30 and your average days AR to 20, and then you, after consulting with your supplier, you boosted it up to 50 days. Now you have a zero gap. That means you've got 65 more days of cash on hand that isn't tied up in inventory in days or accounts receivable. And I think this is an important formula to look at because it's something that you can measure and you know how you're doing. So let's go on to flexible staff planning. And so what it really comes down to is the question is, all right, I played my scenarios. If our sales go down 20%, we can only do well if we're at 80% staffing. And so let's say you had 5 people. That would mean, well, one of you has to go. So instead of saying, I'm going to lay you off, I'd rather say to all my people, all right, there's 5 of us here. Instead of one of you losing a job, let's all work 20% less. That means we can keep everybody employed. We're not working all the same hours or as what we're used to, but we're in this together. So you're basically could be doing job sharing. And as people present this, people realize that we're in this together. We realize that this is beyond the control of our companies. And you've got a good team, they're going to jump on this because they don't want to see somebody not get employment. They don't want to lose somebody. They'd rather be part of the team. So these kind of solutions really do well. The other thing you can also ask for is elective unemployment. Some people just may say, as I said earlier, I can't work because of various circumstances. So that could help. So as I said, using 5 employees and only needing 4, if they all take a bit of a cut, you can keep all of them. So, and then the last thing is, are there staff members that you can let them work from home? Can they do your accounts receivable from home? Can they even do appointments from home? The less people that you have in the office, the more social distancing we have, the better it is for everybody. All right, I'm just going to catch up again to see if anybody has any questions. You can use that Q&A tab at the top of or the bottom of your screen, wherever you have it. I'll just wait a second, otherwise I'll carry on. All right, so let's talk about communications with your bank. And that should be one of the first calls you should be making as this goes on, is talking to your bank and just saying, this is what's going on. I've done some scenarios. I want to run through some of these scenarios with you for you to understand what I'm going through and what options there are available from your services to help us. And when I talk with my bank, and I think what they want and what they relish, and all this is any time of the year, but particularly now, is they want you to be proactive. They want you to reach to them now, not later on. It may take less time to free up loans or more lines of credits now, but if you're proactive, and that shows that you're on top of it. If you're transparent and say, hey, here's what's been going on, maybe my sales weren't as good last year because of whatever, or my profitability wasn't as good for whatever reason, be honest, be transparent. And then do your scenario planning, because what happens is, and I know just talking to my own bank, he's like, well, there will be options. We look at veterinarians as professionals. They're typically well insulated. More things will be available for professionals to get through this crisis than others, unfortunately, but we'll take it. But they want to know what you're going to do. So they don't want to think that all the burden is you're just going to borrow all this money. They want to see, if our sales go down 20%, these are the things I'm going to do to save money. They want to know that you have thought through this, that you've analyzed it, and then you have a plan. And so what they're going to want to see are those scenarios. They're going to want to see the budget that you would have had for this coming year. Maybe they want to see what changes you've had January and February. How close were you to the budget? Because banks want to minimize risk. And the more that they know that you're thinking about this, that some of the assumptions that you have made in the past have been true or close to true, it gives them more security that you're going to be able to do what you say you're going to do. So for example, January, February, you had a budget and your sales were pretty close to the budget and your expenses were spot on to the budget. And it's been like January, February, we did what we said we were going to do. All right. This means that they're a very thoughtful company. They're planned things out. I'm going to be more confident when they give me that scenario planning that those numbers they've come up with are right. And then, of course, they're going to want to look at last year's financials. And ultimately, what they want to know is, what are we doing to mitigate the situation, mitigate the risks? This goes back into, hey, you know what? We're going to go to a slow season, but it is heartworm season, so we're going to do a special on heartworm. Hopefully we can get people in, or, maybe April is going to be a tough month, but with everything that it looks like, if we can start opening up, or society starts opening up a little bit towards the end of April, May and June will be pretty good. So I think that's what they want. Then we're coming to government support programs, and I just put this there. I have nothing really much to say other than look at them. I know in Canada, they're being very aggressive in doing supporting small businesses. And I would just say, find out what is there. What is there? And I think, there's different unemployment. I know Denmark is paying up to 75% of wages if they keep them on the payroll. The UK has announced 80%. Canada has done 10%, and I think they realize they're going to have to do better on that. But we'll take it. You know what? I'll take it. 10% is better than nothing. The other thing, somebody made a good point on the question there. When we go back to what are we doing to help our business mitigate risk, and you can talk to the bankers in terms of maybe you're incorporating a telemedicine servicing. And there's a lot of resources. I've been quite busy talking with certain groups lately about telemedicine, and I will share some of these links on our Facebook and LinkedIn pages. So the government support programs is they're there, investigate it, find out. Often your bookkeeper or accountant, if they're with a larger firm, will have quite a lot of information about this. So coming to marketing. So right away, a lot of people are thinking marketing, we got to get rid of marketing. I can't afford it. And I'm going to say not so quick. This is a great opportunity to really establish relationships with your clients, to make them realize that we're in this together. So really, it'll strengthen these relationships, because again, what we're thinking about, what's it going to look like when this is all over? Most of your competitors are probably going to draw back on marketing. But I think if you can keep your marketing budget or modify it, but keep a marketing presence, it will pay huge dividends when this is all over. One thing we can look at for marketing is getting to know your clients, talk to them, reach out to some of your long-term clients or clients that come to you quite frequently. Ask them what their pain points are. Ask them how they're struggling. Ask them, are there things that you as a vet practice can do for them and the health of their pet? Those are where some of the best ideas will come from, that maybe from talking to a couple of clients, you have that aha moment of, wow, if we do this, we're going to get a lot of business that is socially, we can do it with either telemedicine, we're keeping social distancing, we're not putting anybody at harm's way, but we're really helping the pet and we're helping the relationship with the pet. So people have asked me, hey, can I do a jokey, funny kind of Facebook post? And yeah, these are serious times, but when you're dealing with animal lovers, we all like pictures of animals. The cuteness factor is needed more than ever. So putting on a funny picture of, some animals, cute pictures, just puppies, baby horses, kittens, everybody needs some kind of solace. And if they know that your website or your Facebook page or Instagram is a good resource for that, they'll keep on coming back. And that's what I said, if you can maintain the spending, if you can, of your marketing, because everybody else will be drawing back and you're going to be more positioned as that vet practice that you can depend on, that you're there for the clients. You'll be able to come out of this probably with increased market share. And so, if you had these long-term growth plans, don't stop thinking right now. This is an interruption. It's going to be a painful interruption, but let's look on what's on the other side of that. And then really highlight the value of preventative medicine. If anything has made people more aware of the value of vaccines and preventative medicine, this has done it. So, we really can talk well about vaccines, flea and tick programs, deworming, what have you. So my last point, and I think it's tough, but this is something we got to be thinking about, is how do we stay positive? We got to be positive for our team because they're looking at us, but we also have to stay positive in life. As veterinarians, we want to manage our situations well. We want to know what the outcome is going to be. And when we can't do it, it's very frustrating. So I think we got to remind ourselves, it's okay to not be perfect. This is calamitous times, and we're making a lot of this up as we're going along. Hopefully, a lot of what we've talked about this afternoon are tried and true principles that have been done in previous recessions and other industries. It's okay not to have all the answers. As veterinarians, we pride ourselves on our knowledge, but we don't know all the answers. That's okay. The biggest thing is limit social media. My gosh, you can get on there, start reading the news and getting down a rabbit hole on Facebook. And then you wake up and you're like, oh my God, the sky literally is falling in. There is no hope. Shut it off. There has to be a time at night, you get home from work, you want to check on the news, check on family and what have you on social media. Shut it off. I think I'm seeing Facebook is seeing an increase in users. I'm like, people back off, because that can really start playing with our psyche. Find the comfort in family and friends. I think we're all getting exposed to more things like telemedicine, using platforms like Zoom, Skype, FaceTime. You know what? We can't see family and friends. We can video with them. We can talk with them. And I think those connections are great. finding comfort in my plans, like, I've been able to play with these scenarios. I know what I need to do. I've got a plan. A lot of that uncertainty has been taken away. Now, there is uncertainty, but I know. So if we get to point A, I've got a plan. We get to point B, I've got a plan. So that really helps. I find having the support of the team, I'm on self-isolation right now. I haven't seen anybody from my team for about over a week, because I came in from overseas and we've been required to self-isolate, but I can still talk to them. I can still communicate, and knowing that we're all in this together, and as a practice owner, when you have the responsibility of so many people, knowing that those people are on board and that you're communicating with them, it really, really does happen. It does help. And then finally, this is also kind of a fun thing, is there are projects we can do it slower. Maybe, there are better, your email list is a bit chaotic for when you're sending email blasts. Time to fix it. Maybe there are some codes you need to fix in your practice management software. Time to fix it. Instead of, there's a lot of personal projects we can do, which are great, but it's also the opportunity to do the things that you've been wanting to do in your business that you haven't had a chance to do. So those are the 10 tips that we're going to go into much greater detail and further podcasts, webinars. I will ask again if there are any last questions, but as I'm waiting for that, I will talk about our next webinar next Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, March 31st. As I've been with Whitney Hashir. It's from the High School of Business. My correction is she's from University of California at Berkeley. She's a graduate, got her PhD at Stanford University. Whitney has worked a lot with Oculus and has done some exceptional presentations for our in our summits on entrepreneurship, leadership, but also decision-making in challenging times. And I've been in a few of Whitney's sessions, and it's really, really impressed me in terms of her perspective on these chaotic times. And I think Whitney's going to bring us a wealth of knowledge, and I can't wait for it. That will be recorded too. And if you want to write this down, or we'll be posting this on our Facebook later, if you want information on all of our resources for our resiliency guide for veterinarians through the COVID-19, we're going to be collecting it all there for you to be able to come to it. I don't see any more questions. And so if that is that, I'm going to stop now. You can reach out on Facebook again if you have other questions, things come to you. This is recorded, and once it's stopped, once we upload it, finish recording, we'll be posting it on our resilience guide, but also on Facebook, LinkedIn, so you'll be able to come to it, and we'll be sending you a notification when this is available too. So if you have team members, other partners that you want to share this with, you have it there. Thank you very much for your patience. Good luck. We will get through this. We'll get through this together, and hopefully you'll find a nugget out of these tips here that'll help you move forward.